sites like Second Life, which is a whole platform within the web. A lot of web art started off, for example, in the Whitney Biennial in 2000. A lot of web art looked like it was really constructed from the ground up. Work like, and this is actually a nice screenshot of the web art that was in the 2000 biennial. And also it sort of institutionalized web art as something, as a real art form. It was kind of important in that year. But it had been around for years before that. There was, this is actually a good cross-section of a lot of the concerns that were happening. Ben Benjamin's Superbad is a site that really explored the medium itself of web art in a really interesting way. Mark America is a really textual web artist. Lou Baldwin, a lot of animation. Fake Shop is a really interesting sort of post-colonial identity group that was doing interesting things. Ken Goldberg did a lot with robotics and telepresence. RT Mark was corporate parody. John Simon did a lot of software. He's sort of like an inventor artist. So there's e-literature. So there are a lot of different things happening in 2000, for example. And then in 2001, one of my favorite all-time web art pieces, which Will is going to talk about a lot more, is Keith Obadike selling his blackness on eBay, and Will talk about a lot of that more. But that eBay is a specific platform, right? It's a pre-existing web platform within the internet, right? So that's what we sort of mean by that. So like I said, I saw a lot of this stuff happening, a few months ago when proposing this, and I just wanted to see what was happening with this stuff, and since this seemed really new to me, and even though it had this, some historical context, like Keith Obadike selling his blackness on eBay, and I was really happy to get Will Justice, which I'll introduce, who was talking about it in really nice theoretical terms, and Anthony, who's going to talk about it as a site for education, as in more pedagogical terms, because I'm wondering, a lot of the web art from that's constructed from the ground up, there's some craft involved, and as far as plugging it into a platform, there's not so much like craft, and so I was really interested in how this can be used for education, and it's kind of exciting to me because it suggests some kind of conceptual process where the craft isn't so much there, so it suggests it's sort of like a conceptual process, which is has some exciting implications for me in education. So the piece that really got me interested in it is a piece by Eva and Franco Mattes, or 01001110101101.org, as they're known. It was called The 13 Most Beautiful Avatars, and they spent a year in Second Life as sort of virtual flaneurs, and they sort of floated around. And one of the things they did is, you can take a photo. It's in Second Life. And Second Life is, I think a lot of people say it's a reality, just like our reality. And I think I think it's good to think about it that way. That was the piece. And there was a real show in a gallery. I think it was at Postmasters in New York. And also there was a show that in Second Life. It was a gallery in Second Life you could go and see the show as well. So I'm really interested in what's happening between the two realities, how the relay between those two realities, and how just the conversation between those two. One of there was an Art Forum article about this show, and by Johanna Burton, And this is a quote from that article. "Why are all the artist's subjects so recognizably human? Part of the appeal of the virtual is being unbounded from the constraints of the flesh, but the Matteses do not showcase this element. Even though one avatar, Amy Weber, which is her sports wings, none of these portrait subjects has so much as blue hair, much less an animal head or robotic hands," which, those things can be found in Second Life. But one of the sort of criticisms of Second Life is that there is this emphasis on conventional standards of beauty, and they were sort of going along with that. And I think that's a really good criticism. But on the other hand, this is in the Ars Virtua gallery in Second Life, which is actually run by Rhizome, which is a really, since the 90s, they've been really championing and promoting web art and art and technology. And this was, for me, it wasn't a very successful experience. It was so abstracted and sort of unrecognizable to me that it was just weird to get around, and it wasn't even when it's a challenge to get around, there wasn't any real reward for doing that. So for me, it was like this sort of virtual modernism. It was this abstracted thing. There wasn't anything recognizable to it. So I think the two, from doing something ultra recognizable and playing with conventions and something that's totally abstracted are sort of two poles. But I think something can be found in between those two things, where there's a little bit from something that we can recognize, and between something that's totally made up from the air. So so I feel like projects that don't attempt to recreate reality, there's a real emphasis and drive in worlds like Second Life, where really try to make things as real as possible. And so I'm wondering what that impulse really is about. If you can be freed from reality, why are you trying to make it just like reality, as close as possible? But there's something kind of I realize there's something thrilling within that. So that's something that I'm going to keep in mind and talk about a little bit. So one of the pieces that the Matteses did, they're reenacting some famous performance art pieces. One of them is 7,000 Oaks by Joseph Beuys, where the piece was to plant 7,000 oaks over a piece of time, and plant also a piece of basalt stone next to the oaks. And this is actually happening in some cities, and it's still an ongoing project in New York and a city in Germany. And so this is the project in Second Life. You can actually transport yourself to this place. And I think that building is supposed to be like the building from Documenta or one of those big German art centers. So, and this is what the base of that looks like. You can actually, if you touch the tree or the basalt stone, you can actually get some information about it and get a tree to plant for yourself. And you can go plant it anywhere in Second Life, so you can become part of the project. So yeah, so I was thrilled to see this, and I was wondering why it's so captivating. And despite my own sort of suspicion of just this sort of unmitigated replication of reality without much thought, I realize now that there's something thrilling about that verisimilitude. And so I'm going to talk also about Marina Abramovic's reenactments of important performance art pieces in Guggenheim, and what I'm going to do is sort of use those as a key to talk about, to help understand the reenactments in Second Life and in the real world.